talking the next 5 to 10 minutes, but really excited to present to you today with Kartik. My name is Abby Richter. I'm the lead customer success manager at Tact. And
Kartik Ravindran, I'm the director for supply chain solutions at Kenco Group.
We've been working really closely over the last year or so to implement Tact at a variety of different Kenco facilities. So really excited to talk to you about how we're working together. We're pulling in AI and ops insights to make the warehouse more efficient and effective. So I'm going to pass it off to Kartik.
Yeah, and before we kick it off, I actually, because we're going to talk about AI, I went to ChatGPT and said how many people are going to show up for this meeting, and without giving any information, I just gave the topic, right? And it said 25 to 30 people, and it's pretty much spot on, right? And it also said the session is going to have 2 amazing speakers.
One out of 2.
But, I mean, we can go to the next slide on this thing. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Oh, okay. So just I mean, I won't spend a whole lot of time here, but basically, who Kenco is. So we operate. We are a third-party logistics company. We operate around 140 distribution centers across North America. Have around 7,500 employees. Like I said, and our big bucket of our business is distribution. We also do transportation management and brokerage. And this is the building we partnered with Tact for, and this is one of our sites at Jeffersonville. Just to give you some key, key takeaways from this slide. This building has around 200 associates. It's a one-of-a-kind auto store because we serve 5 different customers in this building. It's a multi-client building, has 10 picking ports, throughput capacity of 15 million units for the year. And this is the site where we piloted Tact just from a productivity and a labor standpoint, right? So one of the things I'll kind of go over is the challenges that we had from a productivity standpoint and from a labor tracking standpoint. The first one is the lack of traditional labor standards. And what I mean by that is in a traditional environment, it's easier for us to set expectation for our associates and teammates because there are not many variable components. But when it comes to an automated environment and we have complex processes, that is definitely a challenge, right? The second one is the limited visibility from WMS and automation. A lot of our automation solutions and WMS focuses majorly on the throughput, right? Units picked, units shipped, but not necessarily how long did it take a teammate or an associate to do a task, right? There is a risk of assumption that the teammate that is not doing their job or is not being productive, but in a sense, it could be because of a system issue or because of the way the work flows. The third one is system-driven variability and exception handling. Again, this is a big one. In terms of when we have automation solutions, there are a lot of pieces that the teammates do not control. So how do we track those? How do we track those exceptions? Right, labor sharing across tasks and customers. Like I said, for this particular building, we serve 5 different customers. To make it more complex, we have actually 2 different WMS as well. For us, we definitely wanted to get visibility on all the different tasks for all these different customers. And then the 5th one is empower and engage associates. When there is automation, when there is AI, there's of course the human part of it where it's our teammates, right? So we want to make sure that we are able to empower our teammates using the right tools. So
Cool. Take over from here. Cool. So I know we've heard across this conference WERC how AI can ultimately help or hinder your production. I'm hoping that through these next couple slides, we can show you how we took a more human-centric approach to that, really keeping the end user, the operator in mind. So first off, what is Tact? We are a labor management system, but we call ourselves Warehouse Intelligence Platform. We utilize and we have a lot of different key features that I think differentiates us from other LMS systems. One is the labor management and engagement platform, what Kartik was talking about. The challenges that we saw at Jeff One. How can we bring just clear-cut visibility into not only what's happening in the true WMS, but also all the external factors that Kartik just mentioned. So automation, robotics, the missing gaps in terms of visibility into potentially indirect time spent, non-captured time, off-task time. How do we create essentially an audit trail so that not only folks on the floor can engage their people more, but also engineers, CI folks, business leaders know what's happening and can make improvements from there. Second piece, continuous improvement in engineering. To Kartik's points, that labor standards, how do we get there? How do we utilize the transactional records that we're getting, codifying them in a way to actually obtain insights and clear next steps on, okay, is this too soft? Is this too hard? But also make that manageable for either the team of engineers who are maintaining the system or myself to help out. And then finally is the data analytics and strategy. I think this is the piece where our AI system comes in the best. We'll talk further about that, but I think it's an iterative process. We have different AI bots who are coming in and basically bringing more attention to the different areas that might need some additional love, might need some additional insight into to ensure that we are tracking against the metrics that the engineers, CI team are posting against these transactions. Cool. Also, I'm gonna talk a lot, so is Kartik. Please stop us for any questions that you have. I wanna make this an engaging presentation. So if you have experience in labor management, wanna know the differentiators of tech, just let me know. Cool, okay, so once we engaged with Kenco, we decided Jeff One was gonna be our pilot site. As Kartik said, we were actually coming in the week that AutoStore was launched, so super easy, right?
Yeah,
No issues
problem.
there. But the clear-cut first priority was bringing visibility into the different pieces of data that was going on that we didn't have previous visibility into. First, obviously, is the WMS, DePosco. Great, we love the system. Folks on the floor already knew what the different standards they should be tracking to, but that was for the area in general. It wasn't giving clear cut, okay, employee A was doing great, Abby was doing terrible. How do we fix this and how do we keep improving so that Abby doesn't force our area into—
She was actually doing terrible.
Yeah, it was actually doing terrible. The second piece is AutoStore. Previously, or when we were getting in, AutoStore was just starting up. We needed to tap in via API to relate those transactional records back to the individual employee, as well as find some areas of improvement so that Kartik's team, the CI team, can make changes and continue to derive value from AutoStore, as well as using tax insights to maintain that to continue. And then finally, obviously, with any labor management system, we're connecting the time clock, the HRS payroll, to basically combine and have an output for employee performance. We're organizing this also with a different layer of indirect time, such as there's a big vast kitting area in Jeff One. We want to be able to track that, collect the time spent in that area first, attribute the potential kitting work done to the different teammates who are spending time in that area, and then develop standards off of that. So instead of just, okay, these 5 to 10 employees are kitting these many 50 cases an hour, okay, cool. We can now attribute all of that work to the said employee based on the time that they're spending in that area. And then finally, the most important piece, which we will always come back to, is the coaching and feedback. We want to ensure that the feedback loop is consistent, that we are having AI help us, not hinder us. We're keeping that human aspect, as I think our keynote speaker talked about, putting a computer in front of yourself and an associate, me as a manager, that's not going to ensure that we're having equitable and actionable conversations. It's going to hinder us. So how do we make it easier for the managers who are already super busy? Just allow those conversations to happen. Cool. Okay, second phase is labor standards. So baseline metrics here are those UPH-based standards. We're collecting the transactional records against those standards that we set and seeing the output there. We have this really awesome tool called the rate analyzer. You can basically set the rate where you think you want to put it and see the insights on, okay, out of 50 employees, 20% are going to hit this. We should, increase or decrease, soften or harden these standards so that we can refine and continually improve that. I know just talking with Rohit, with Jen, other members of the team, They made some great changes using this tool right here. Think of it as like a model for what we could set the standard at based on the transactional data, the transactional time spent, the units gone through. We're able to see how we're doing if we set the standard harder or softer to get the most out of our people.
And from an engineering standpoint, right, like I said, the building has 5 customers, so many different functions, and it gets really difficult for us to maintain and keep up with the standards. So this really helps as in to see where our standards are current state. So
Totally. Cool. Questions here, thoughts, feedback?
So are standards, are they developed initially with TMUs or how, or is it more of?
So they're more of UPH based
Okay.
standards, and then as we collect more historical data, TACT actually tells us, okay, where the standards need to be and how our teammates performing to some of the standards, and we are able to visualize that.
So like machine learning
Yeah.
type, got it. Okay.
Great setup for a second session. Thank you. Yeah, good point. Yeah, to Kartik's point, we want to make sure that, you know, in Jeff 1, I'm sure there's hundreds of standards living within TACT. We're able to utilize AI and our different bots within that to flag which ones are too hard, too soft, so that his team can make actionable kind of next steps to improve those standards and to ensure that folks are being judged fairly. Cool. Third one is deploying TACT to the auto store. So obviously we're connecting not only the WMS, auto store, indirect areas. We wanted to be able to find the waiting for work, the downtime. So what we did is we worked with Kartik's team to develop this kiosk. What this does is that anytime I'm at the auto store, and let's say I've been waiting for a bin for the last 5 minutes, if you're my manager and you see me out of function for 5 minutes, you're gonna think I'm like on my phone slacking off. What we're able to tell the system and what we're able to do is for that individual associates to punch in that waiting for work time to attribute, okay, this 5 minutes, I'm waiting for work. And then what the system does is it auto clocks them out the next time we see a transactional record. So whether that is in the POSCO, whether that's in the auto store, we're able to like automatically do that. Obviously there is some manual intervention as with any LMS, but again, this is the employee taking complete ownership of their day so that when Kartik has his monthly performance review with me, I'm not totally out of, my audit trail is there and clear day in, day out. And that the employee is taking ownership of their day. Following that is not only just me being like, hey, okay, I'm clocking these tasks, I'm able to track my indirect hours, Kartik's cool with me, I'm also able to see my individual employee performance. So what you see here is what we like to call TAC TV. This is our shiny new feature, but this is completely configurable based on the metrics that your individual area, not only facility, wants to see. So we work really closely with the engineer there, with Kartik's team, to develop this out to say, okay, we're tracking to productive UPH, efficiency, utilization, direct UPH. We're outputting that to the employees that are on the floor in that area, and then we're able to stack rank the employees. So another conversation I was in was all about healthy competition. This is a really great tool for that. So obviously we set configurable thresholds, red, obviously bad, green, good. But we work really closely with Kartik and the rest of the team to be able to set those thresholds so that if I'm an employee and I'm in the red, I can not only see that, but also I can go up to Kartik or my manager and say, how do I get myself out of this? How do I take better ownership and accountability of my day so I'm out of the red and I'm in the green along with all of my other coworkers?
And one of the things that we have done with this specifically is just not displayed on the dashboards and the TVs, but you can have a web link and the supervisors or the ops leaders can just click the link and they can just get a quick overview, real-time performance overview of where the site's at from a performance standpoint.
Yeah, totally. We've meshed this into our training where typically when we train out to the end user, the operator, we want to make this as easy as possible for them. I think that's on there.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Where are employees entering their time and classification? Are they using their ARC units?
Yeah, really good question. So we take the RF gun, the transactional data. The employee is not going into TACT and entering that. The only time there's manual intervention is if they're clocking any off-gun, out-of-system work that they want to essentially have an audit trail / be accountable for their day. And so all of the different transactional units that we're seeing on someone's day, or when they're clocking in for start of shift, lunch, last shift, or clock out for the day, all of that is being worked in the back end of Tact. And so the user is not going in and saying, I was working in picking at 11:52:59. And so the only time there's any manual intervention is some indirect functions, which account for around 30% of the facilities, any facility. So, it's less than half of what's
Okay, so
going
that
on.
data is kind of real time?
Totally, yeah. We're getting to POSCO, we're getting auto store data every 15 minutes, and so the goal is, with this Tact TV, as well as the UI within Tact, it's very real-time metrics. So if I'm an operator, if I'm a manager, I can filter down to my specific area and truly see, okay, what is Kartik doing, what is Abby doing, what is Lily doing, and I can coach effectively based on that. Typically, we don't say, like, coach in real time because things can change throughout the day, but we can filter, or using our time capturing, we can filter for yesterday, last week, last month, to see a historical trend if someone is not performing up to the ability we want them to.
And historically, for indirect time, we have used kiosks where associates go to the kiosk, say waiting for work. But with this, we have deployed this in their RFs, so they're easily able to log into their RF and say, is it what type of indirect activity they're on. So
Yeah, ultimately we want the individual associate to know how they're performing, because that's what's gonna help the facility as a whole. And I think another theme layer on this is the peer-to-peer coaching, which I'm hopeful that we can get into as well, because it's meaningful when your manager has a performance review with you or checks in with you, how's your day, how's it going, you saw a dip, but I think it's even more meaningful when a peer is checking in with you doing the same thing. Cool.
Can you, real quick, the indirect codes, so if you got like a multi-client environment,
Yeah.
can you silo those codes for that business?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
we can. At Jeff One, we don't. We have it auto store versus general support. And so at the end of the month or during 30, 60, 90-day reviews, we can see a drop down of all of the different indirect codes that employees have logged into and see the breakdown of hours spent. There won't be an efficiency against it because there's no standard, but we really just want to capture the time and use it to lower it, basically.
But if I was, thinking if you had dedicated associates for that particular business, if I go on the RF to select an indirect code, am I gonna get a drop down for the entire building? Or will those indirect codes be siloed to that business?
Yeah, good question. So on the URL, so what you see here, that can be configured based on we call them templates, what you want specifically for that area. So in AutoStore, we're only showing them AutoStore templates. There's 3 or 4. In the RF gun, to your point, it would be the majority of templates that we configure, but we have a QR code that we can put in those different areas where the associate just has to scan it, and it will pop up the template and then just basically saying, okay, and then the next time they transact, it will auto log them out of that indirect area. Yeah, good question. Anyone else? That's good. Okay, cool. Okay, so bringing it back to why AI. Ultimately, productivity is about people. We want to better empower the front line. We want to better empower the end user. We want to ultimately facilitate human-to-human interaction using our tool to suss out what needs to be talked about and kind of disregard the rest. So, kind of future phase or current phase of what now? We trained the end user, we've trained and worked in tandem with Kartik's team. What can we do to enable and empower the manager today? So what you're seeing up here is our manager dashboard. All of those different hashes where you see bottom 50, facility performance rank, observation summary, a lot of that is powered by AI. So our goal is, in Jeff One, we have taught all of the managers to find their own individual name and just focus in on this screen. What this screen shows you is everything you need to know to bring to either a daily stand-up meeting, user or associate performance review, just have a gut check on how your day and your associates are doing. I like to say we want to spend as little time in the system as possible because we want the manager or whoever to go in, go out, understand the data that they're seeing, and feel empowered to make actionable next steps on that. What you're seeing below here, that is an individual shift. So to your point, Maria, all of those little different like bubbles, those are the individual transactions that we're getting from the WMS, the auto store, all of those different data systems that we are connecting in the back end of the system. What you're also seeing here is a clock in for start of day, lunch, end of day, and those breaks in the middle are time off task. That is crucial. That is the goal of Jeff 1, is to reduce the time off task. We want to be able to attribute the work that is being done, that is off gun, that could potentially contribute to time off task, and then laser focus in on the people who have been out of function, out of task, and work with them to decrease that or have a conversation with them on that. So we want to increase utilization, we want to decrease time off task. We ultimately also want to decrease startup and shutdown time because that affects the bottom line of the facility. Cool. Awesome. So with the vein of having those human-to-human interactions, those conversations, something else that's, I think, a really good perk of our platform is observation. So whether this is on an individual standard, an individual activity, where a manager is checking in, observing someone for a period amount of time, what you're seeing here in the comment section. So we all know managers very busy in their day. They do not have time to go back from the performance dashboard, the productivity dashboard, Tact AI, all this stuff, to then output specific performance-related metrics. We want the manager to have a non-biased, metric-informed conversation with their associate so that one, the associate feels like they're being taken care of. Two, the associate knows that, oh, this isn't because Kartik hates me, that he's giving me a bad performance review. This is because I'm actually not performing to the level that I should be at. And so what Tact AI does, it spits out, I will say, like a mouthful of what you can eventually input into the comment section. But this, for any manager, will really help inform the conversation and open up the thread that is specifically related to performance metrics and anything else that the manager wants to say. So this is a really helpful tool, and in Jeff 1, they've totally implemented it and started using it at a much higher rate. And I think it's really, I mean, it has really helped performance.
And just to be nosy, me and my team did some picking so we can see our observation feedback. We trust it. So, but just to give some context, I think what this tool or what this enables the ops partners is to really just not focus on the data, but also give the context behind it, right? It makes it a little personable as well, because you just don't want to talk about numbers, but talk about what the context is, how they are doing. So I think this is how we've kind of used it.
Yeah. And I think we're honestly evolving this. I think this can get a lot better in the future, but folks like Kenco are such great partners in helping us develop this even further. And so the more people we get to record observations, the better we're gonna get, and the better the model gets as well. Cool. Okay, so what are the metrics and outcome? How do all of this relate back to performance increases? So Jeff 1 results post-launch, we launched Feb 1. In auto stores specifically, so the picking and replan tasks for across the different multi-client customers within auto store, we saw a 15% increase in performance post-go live, so that's efficiency and utilization. Second point is decrease in startup and shutdown time. I'm not going to say the specific numbers, but when we first enabled Tact in the facility, it was really bad startup and shutdown time. We have decreased that for over 23 minutes since go live, which is pretty phenomenal. Startup and shutdown time, I think, are the easiest wins that every facility that initially gets Tact can go after, because that's just coaching for your operators. That's also just capturing the productive time using our kiosk and making sure we're attributing that work and giving that credit back to the associate. And then finally, the last piece, most important piece, is the observation increase month over month. We had like 2 observations in Feb, 14 in March, 116 in April, and 79 in May. And since implementing Tact, we have now seen that not only observations, but everything else are leading to morning stand-ups to address any performance gaps, questions, using Tact data, which, okay, yes, Tact data, very important to have those conversations, but the most important part is the physical act of talking through what is actually happening and what can we do better. And so I know the team over at Jeff One is super plugged in, which is why this is going so well. So honestly, biggest kudos to them and Kartik's team, but truly, like, it has totally transformed, I think, their conversation cadence with their employees.
And one of the things that we have done is just with observations, right? Have some foundational questions like, hey, is the teammate following the SOP or the process? And all of the data we can see at the back end and say, okay, 60% of our teammates that we observed followed the process, 40 did not. And we can then break down into specific areas and say packing, 80% of the teammates follow the process, but in picking, maybe not so much. So there's a lot of data behind as well that we are able to kind of look in and drive action.
Yeah. Anything else that Jeff wants to remind us? Cool. Okay, all good things. And then finally, the last piece I will say to this is, to Kartik's point earlier, how do we maintain the system? I think that's always the question for any labor management system. I would say TACT is pretty good at not only not charging additional fees to maintain it, but also at the same time flagging proactively and at a much bigger and higher cadence. So what you're seeing here on the left, all of those are the different standards. Those different flags, efficiency too high, attainment too high, that is our AI system telling Kartik's team, you need a second look at these standards. We're seeing wacky performance numbers against that. Let's look in that and let's utilize our rate analyzer tool to see, okay, where should this standard be at and where was it set? We can set those dynamically based on time ranges to say, okay, what is the model against this rate and this one? How does that affect time over time and the performance of those associates against it? And then up here over at the upper right, these are email alerts that anyone who signs up with a role within TACT, so whether it be the manager or a facility leader or an operations lead, you will get emails that, again, we don't want the managers spending all their time in the TACT system. We want them deriving quick insights so that they can have a gut check of how are things going, what do I need to change. Up here at the top are the high-level hero metrics that I think most people care the most about. The red and green are comparing it to the previous day. And then over here on the bottom, there's much more to this, but I just want to give you a high-level overview, is our TACT Coach Insights. So it's calling out specific areas, specific people who we think are out of compliance and may need a second look at. So this is specifically related to folks on Kartik's team who are potentially massaging different standards, potentially changing things around, but hopefully gives them a lot of guidance in, okay, what do I have to do to maintain the system? How do I make it a lot clearer? And how can I work with Abby so that she helps me more? So,
and I can tell this was one of our biggest challenges, right? So we have 140 DCs to support. Processes change, to keep up with the standards and maintenance of it was becoming an uphill task. So with this, I think what we are able to do is really empower our engineers to, proactively look at some of the things without, these standards going out of place. I think we are proactively identifying this, which has helped us quite a bit. So.
And I think throughout the implementation, the configuration process, Kartik's team has gotten so good at TAC that we can do most of it virtually and then come on site and train operations in like a week and a half. And so, this has been such a great partnership, and I think more of your team now are like invested in learning TACT and utilizing it in their own facilities. And so the more knowledge, the easier folks can turn the system on and configure it based on previous labor standards, processes, departments, activities. All of it is super configurable and very user-friendly so that we can make quick changes and make them happen effectively.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So I don't know for Arctic or for you, Abby. What was the decision criteria to start with auto store versus another area that is more labor intensive?
Do you want me to?
Yeah. So great question, right? So one of the things that we kind of wanted to look at was from an LM standpoint, how do we integrate it with the automation solutions, and how do we? Because one of the things is, when an automation is in place, a lot of it is dictated by the system, right? But there are users who support and make it successful. So how do we build a system or a tool that empowers them, and in a whole holistic view, like how can we become more successful, right? So that was one of the biggest things that we kind of looked at, and also we did have some traditional labor management systems at some of our other sites. So we definitely wanted to look at how an LM can integrate with automation solution.
And then do you see eventually these tags replacing the other LMS or?
Yeah, we're still kind of,
leaning to tags?
yeah, so our pilot has gone super successful, so we're looking at some other sites now, but definitely I think what TACT has enabled is like I said, I think one of the biggest challenges that we had is engineers trying to keep up with the standards and with all the things going in the supply chain, processes change, profile changes, and it's just a constant battle, right? And we want to be mindful and make sure we are setting up the right expectation for our teammates, and in a way, how do we make it more easier? So.
Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions? Those are great. Cool. So, finally, to recap, our keys to success: leveraging modern technologies, making implementation a lot easier, a lot more user-friendly. Partnering with customers, Kenco, like I've said a million times, awesome partner. They've really helped us up the ante on what our platform can do when it continues to do. Consistently roll out new capabilities. I mean, Kartik's team is awesome and so knowledgeable, and they really push us to roll out new capabilities to work for them and their sites. And then finally, focus on results. I mean, obviously, performance metrics is one thing, but also having that face-to-face interaction with your associates, maintaining them, not consistent or not high turnover, really focusing on how the associate can derive the most value out of this system and beyond is the most important piece. Cool. Anything else you want to add to that? Okay, cool. Questions?
So is there XY coordinates, are those tied into the standards or?
Yes.
So if you've got like a location that's not mapped, let's say you got like a process here, so I'm kind of referring to the Blue Yonder platform, is there somewhere those assignments go and is somebody notified?
Yeah, that's the maintenance piece of it, right? So when there are errors and when there are locations missing, proactively lets the IEs or the engineers or the operations team know that, hey, these are some systemic challenges that you have and we need to get it fixed.
Yeah, we have XYZ implemented at Burner site, and there's obviously some challenges that arose with that. I think our system can get better and a little bit more dynamic there, but we worked really closely with Kartik's team to develop out solutions that will work for that. Specifically when we're talking about tricky data systems that we're getting, as you guys probably know a lot about. But yes, to Kartik's point, either that will flag as something that's coming in as unknown, something unmapped, or it will flag in the standard that something's up, we need to check in on that. And typically, I usually go to those emails that I get sent and see, okay, what are the heavy hitters that I need to fix, and flag to either Kartik's team or I can take a look and proactively alert them of that.
So if you fix the alert for the error, like is that data still captured, so when you make that change it goes back and adjusts according to?
It will retro.
So it's not just like lost?
No, it will, if we don't capture, let's say, like a transactional record, we're not attributing it to a logic rule. Say it's been flowing unknown for 3 months. If I go in the system and I create a logic rule for that, it will retroactively backfill so that the previous unknown time will now be attributed to a standard or department categorized, essentially. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to having it at one of my sites here soon.
Just hit me up. It's on the road.
It's on the road now.
Glenn, do you have your hand up? Okay, cool. Anyone else? You're just that informative and awesome. Anyone has questions?
So I have a probably a silly question, but from a end user, you're only as good as your data, right?
Yep.
As good as your associates putting that data in there. Was that a huge lift on their part to be like, hey, in your everyday now you've got to do yet another step in the process for whatever that process is for your customer? How was that received?
So, I mean, yeah, so great question, right? So one of the things we wanted to make sure is it's not an additional task or responsibility on the associate, right?
Okay.
So they are doing what they were supposed to do, nothing has changed.
Okay.
But the way we visualize and we derive actionable insights is what has changed.
Okay.
From their standpoint, nothing has changed.
Nothing
They
has
continue the
changed.
process,
Okay.
yeah. Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have is like, hey, we put in a new system and then we got to train them and there are a bunch of other things. But one of the things that we have done is basically to focus on more on the data piece and how to derive better actionable insights.
Yeah, and I think our user experience for, I'm assuming you're talking about maybe indirect time. Previously, I wasn't recording me going into the kitting session. That was all blind to not only my manager, but higher ups. Where it is like essentially a second step, but we're also trying to relate back to the employee, like you should be accountable for your day. You shouldn't have us wondering, what are you doing for these 4 to 6 hour stretches in the middle of the day? And so it's a piece of employee accountability to then hopefully portray up on Attack TV, or to just keep the employee more or more aware of what they're doing. I think our training is pretty all-encompassing. We like to train the managers who then train their associates. Obviously, there are special people in that who are pushing back to it, as any LM system is, but I think we're pretty comprehensive, and we try to be as user-friendly as possible. And like I always say, the goal isn't to spend all your time in the system. That would suck. Let's just get you in and out and capture the data first, the time spent, and then let's see how we can relate a standard to it so Kartik and the rest of the team can get performance metrics based off of that.
Can you create like accountability plans and pay for performance inside the application?
Yeah, we are working on an incentive model. It's not necessarily in the platform today, but if you ask really nicely of our CPO, he will spin something up. I'm kidding, but yeah, I mean, we still need to work with y'all on what that incentive model could look like.
So, but that has is the retention rate. So let's say you observe someone today, you can actually look and go back and look their retention rate of the team, or whoever we observe. So that's a key, like just as an example, I think for one of the activities, I can't remember pick or pack, the retention rate was like 70 or 80% since the observations were done, right? For an activity where we did not do observations, the retention was much lower. So we are able to look at the retention rate because TAG captures the hire date of an associate.
Yeah, we get past the hire date, and then we can, to Kartik's point, slice and dice the data on how we want to compare the two. Alongside that is also a performance lift or decrease. So based on like historical data and or previous data, we can see from the time of last observation to current state how your performance has changed. To again have another data point to point to that observations are effective and helpful and not a hindrance. Glenn?
I just had a question about the observations. What does that look like from a frontline manager perspective?
Yeah.
Like eliminating barriers for your associates to have these uses of broad product things.
So this is across our platform. You can access this form right here at different entry points, but it's basically, think of it as just like a comment section and pieces of questions that we can configure based on a department activity. Maybe it's a Kenco-wide initiative that, for me, every single time I give my associate an observation, I need to say whether or not they're being compliant based on these questions, yes, no, or short answer. And so with this form then goes into our observation records, and then from there we get an engagement output. So that is that retention rate, that performance lift or decrease. Other pieces within that where we can splice and dice the data to then output why is this meaningful? Because that's all we're really trying to get here is if you do an action, how can we relate that back to our folks performing better or worse?
I have one more question.
Yeah.
So do you see your clients using more like to replace LMS or to really integrate with LMS and WMS?
Yeah. I think the way we have approached it is more of a holistic view, right? It's just not specific on teammates alone, right? We want to focus on the process, we want to focus on our people. So just more of I would say like looking at the entire building and all the data points that relate to it, right? And not just specific to labor elements. And one of the things that we do with TAG is we kind of bring TAG's data back into our systems, so we we can unify all of the data together and look at different things.
So is it more about where it's more efficient to get those data points from and use them? So it could be LMS or it could be.
Yeah, because TAG does all the calculation from an LM standpoint, already derives actionable insights, so we just pull that into ours, so we can look at all of the different things like safety, quality, and just not be specific to product.
And like that second piece to your question of, do we typically see customers who haven't had an LMS or transitioning to TAG? I would say it's split 50-50. Some of the sites I go to, last week I was at a site where everyone who worked in the building was there for around 20 years and they've never had an LMS. And so this is like a huge change management project for them to wrap their head around that. Some are like so eager and they're ready to start seeing actual performance data. Others, obviously, we're gonna have to spend a little extra time with them. But usually I do see a lot of folks who we do have this end user training to, they have had experience with other like traditional LMSs or in-house LMSs, and most of the time they are asking for insights into the data like this. So typically we get good responses. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Anything else before we?
Best session ever.
Yeah, right? Give us a 5, please. Okay, cool. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it.